It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil, Amok to you. How are you? Welcome to my place. My. It is a secret. I don't tell many people about this. You find me on YouTube at Emil Amok 1. You find me on Facebook, fb.com, because it says, hey, he's live. He's live. You find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, now known as Elon Sandbox. You find me on X because it pops up if you follow me. If you're one of my 1,500, maybe you're followers, maybe you're just got nothing to do. But I pop up 2 p.m. Pacific live because I'm affected by the day. I have done radio talk shows in the past, and I feel like I have to do a talk show. I've been a broadcaster, and instead of spending a few $100,000 millions of dollars or whatever it costs now to buy a big stick radio station, AM somewhere, they want to get rid of AM stations. But I know people who actually have done that. They bought an AM station so they could do their own radio show. But instead of that, you just do this. You go online and you say, here I am, from the comfort of your own COVID closet. You can tell it's got my old Rage Against the Machine t-shirt here next to my gong. And you do a talk show. So here are the things that are bothering me. And I do this like a regular. I say regular. I do this as the kind of talk shows that I grew up with, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, before it got hijacked by the right wing and everything was right wing. I was much more comprehensive. And there were times when I took a conservative stance, very rarely. But most times I was just talking about the news in a way that would invite people to say, oh, yeah. Because you hear the news and it's not enough to just sort of try to understand it and digest it. You got to talk about it. Or you want to hear people talk about it. But I guess the talk show business, they realize that, people want to do that with sports. They want to talk about sports because sports is so inconsequential. You want the escape. Yeah, I could do that too. And there's some talk show hosts that are so general that they are meaningless. But I like to talk about consequential things, the news. So it's news talk. It's traditional news talk. Except I cut you out. Well, you can listen and you can respond. You can write a little text or you can just turn your face to the left and just yell out something. Oh, you stupid. Or you can turn your face to the right and just say, oh, wow, I never thought about that. So that's what we do here. That's what this exercise is about in Emil's closet here. It is the talk show format in the modern day by a former talk show practitioner. And I'm telling you exactly how I feel about things. If you like this, you can join my Patreon where I put up full, uncensored, unedited episodes of this program. Go to Patreon, Patreon, patreon.com/Emil Amok, EMIL-AMOK, and sign up in all the various tiers. It's linked to the column that I am now posting on Substack. Go to substack.com/@Emil Amok, substack.com/@Emil Amok, EMIL-AMOK, and you can get the column that you can read the columns. I'll put the column up tomorrow. And then the cycle begins. If you like the various tiers on Patreon, I read the column because that's where a lot of the shows I do, the one-man shows I do, come from columns. So I'll read. You get to hear the read version, like Emil reading a bedtime story to you. And then I do the regular talk show. And you can skip around. It's your playground, and it's uncensored, and there's no commercials. So pick a tier, join in the fun. Emil Amok Emil Amok's Takeout, my micro talk show of the AAPI, the AAXs, and if you're none of those, an AAPI or an AAX or AAL or ALL, all's the rest of us, I do this show. WDAAAT, what does an Asian American think? Because it still matters. I mean, you can diss identity politics, but I think we need it's a new kind of identity politics. It's not like a knee-jerk identity politics. It's not the truly super woke identity politics, but it is one that talks about us, talks about Asian Americans. Because I've written this column for more than almost 30 years. It was an Asian Week, then I moved it to the ALDEF site. Now I'm just putting it on Substack. But it's also in some newspapers, ethnic newspapers around the country, if not around the world. So check it out. Emil Amok's Takeout. I just call it Emil Amok because I am Amok. So today, we've got a swish transition because every talk show has a swish transition, you know. Today is October 7th. And I didn't know what to think really, except to say you got to feel extremely sad today. Because how many people thought on October, that first week, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, you thought maybe it would be over soon. Maybe the horror would be over soon. And then came November, and then December, and then January, and then February, March. It just kept going. And you start looking around at all the other things in the world that we need to be paying attention to. Ukraine, Russia, China. None of those things are going away. And suddenly you see just how dangerous, how nasty 2024 has been. We're here a year later, and even though there was some hope, maybe late summer, early September, where are we now? And so this is a tough one, right? We from the very beginning, I think a lot of us wanted to say, well, that's the Middle East. And we weren't sure what was going to happen. A lot of people just weren't paying attention prior to October 7th, thinking that, people are getting along, got the Abraham Accord, there's movement, we're going to get along, we're going to get through this. And then October 7th happened, and now some of us are just trying to maintain a kind of peaceful facade, crossing our fingers, hoping that the politicians can do something. But the politicians have shown, especially the Israeli politicians, have shown they're trying to save their own tail. And now it looks like we're even going into further multiple front war. 7 fronts. I think Netanyahu said, we're fighting a 7-front war. Well, is that better than fighting no war and just learning how to peacefully coexist? And then, of course, there are the people who have relatives who have been through the anguish of this period, the hostage crisis. And then there are people on both sides. I mean, the Palestinians getting bombed, living in the rubble, trying to survive. I mean, this is not a good time for the world. And we're at a juncture now with less than 30 days to go until the election. And think of the irony. People who didn't like what Biden's doing or Biden-Harris is doing, they're going to vote for the other guy because Biden can do something. But Biden could be stronger. we supply all the arms to Israel and Israel doesn't listen to us, and we can't be strong enough to say, hey, we need these final points in the peace plan. We have 15 out of 18. Let's go for the rest. And no, we seem to be right there going for an extension of this perpetual war. So we have people who say, well, I can't vote for Biden Harris because look at what they've done. And then we have people who say, well, I can't vote for Harris. What is she going to do? And yet she has been most compassionate, far more compassionate than I think Donald Trump, who just says, if I were president, this wouldn't have happened. And don't fall for it, because there would have been other things that would have happened that may have been far worse. So people are going to kick this one around if it's on their conscience, on their mind, about who am I going to vote for? There is no good solution, because all governments seem hamstrung. The organizations that we turn to, the UN, where's the UN? The Israeli government, where? The US government? We're hamstrung. So I took some solace from reading what Marianne Williamson wrote today. Marianne Williamson would have made a great president. She might have, if there were enough people who saw her wisdom. And maybe she's just a better writer, spiritual person than she would be a politician. But it was worth a shot to see Marianne Williamson out there, if you were lucky to see her, because there was kind of a boy that people would gladly put RFK Jr. out there, but not Marianne Williamson. People gladly put out Dean Phillips, who is sort of like all the rest of them from the Democratic side, but not Marianne Williamson. She ultimately is back doing her writer, spiritual teaching things. And I subscribe, and this is what she wrote today. Today is the 1-year anniversary of October 7th. A day of incalculable horror was followed by another year of incalculable horror. While some would say, don't you dare both sides this, I can't imagine not. To God, both Israelis and Palestinians are immeasurably precious. This situation is not just an Israeli tragedy or a Palestinian tragedy. It is a human tragedy. The tragedy itself has no sides at all. In A Course in Miracles, it is written that God does not give us victory in battle. He lifts us above the battlefield. Just as Rumi wrote that beyond all ideas of good and bad, right or wrong, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Our greatest gift to both Palestinians and Israelis is to refuse to hate either, to rise above the perception of their differences to the holy vision of their oneness in God. Now, boy, does that not take a set of balls to say, we got to rise above this. We must. And if we fail, we got this. This is what we're left with. But just to be out there and say, and to have the people say, don't you dare both sides this. The people who are saying, God loves both. Israelis and Palestinians are immeasurably precious. Well, it's the only way out of this. Because unless we dare to do that, we're stuck with this same old perpetual war, never ending, because there's a surplus of hate and no love. Back to Marianne Williamson. She says, I noticed years ago, having visited Israel and Palestine several times, that the refusal to appreciate nuance that's so prevalent in the United States, to even acknowledge its validity, much less its importance, was not so prevalent in that part of the world. The refusal to appreciate nuance. Everyone's in a nuance now. Sometimes I'm just blunt as hell. There's times for nuance. This may be one of those times. Back to Marianne. So many in America have been willing to exalt the rights of one people at the expense of the rights of the other. But the first time I went to Israel, I remember my guide said to me as I prepared to leave, if you're not heartbroken, then I didn't do my job here. If you're not heartbroken, then I didn't do my job here, the guide said to Marianne Williamson. She continues, today, any conscious person is heartbroken. And about Israel and Palestine, there are various levels of truth. In many cases, the situation is less who's right and who's wrong here, but rather, what do we do here, considering the ways that they're both right and they're both wrong? In A Course in Miracles, there is a meditation that I've done with groups for years when speaking about this tragedy. We close our eyes and see the body of both an Israeli and a Palestinian with our inner eye, dressed as we normally associate with them, dressing and behaving as we normally associate with them behaving. Then we begin to see a light that emanates from the center of both bodies. We watch the light expand beyond the confines of their bodies and then bear witness to the space between them, where the light becomes one. That light is the eternal soul that dwells within us all. Beyond the body, that is the truth of their relationship, where in the light they are one. How many times do we ever take the time to do that, to find out where that space is between not just them, but all of us? That light is the eternal soul that dwells within us all beyond the body. That is the truth of their relationship, where in the light they are one. Williamson says, I have known both Israelis and Palestinians who are peace builders at heart, who have worked for years to achieve peace in this region of the Middle East. In the Course, it is written that the holiest spot on earth is where an ancient hatred has become a present love. One of the greatest parts of this tragedy is how the work of such peace builders has been pushed back for decades, perhaps longer now. Adding to the tragedy is how many people who died that day, and since we're part of that work, it is impossible for me to think deeply about this day without immeasurable sorrow. After October 7th, there was much video shown that had been captured from the cameras of Hamas terrorists. One slice of video that ran often was of an Israeli woman, obviously terrified, being led away by Hamas fighters as she clutched in her arms a little boy about a year or so old who had flaming red hair. I've not read of their return. I've not been able to get that woman or her baby out of my mind this entire year. Nor can any of us get out of our minds the images of Palestinian children suffering or their parents grieving. The utter incredible horror of this for everyone involved. It's true. I mean, you watch the news. I mean, today I was watching the cousin of a family that was kidnapped. They had a 9-month child, also kidnapped. Of course, their house was burned from the kibbutz they were taken. Of course, the parents were killed. And these people, the family was taken. They're, who knows where they are. They're among the couple hundred who are still unaccounted for, that we hope are alive, but we're not sure. And the relative said, empathy is not enough. Empathy is not, we need action. We need something. We've been standing still for a year. Empathy is not enough, he said. And it's true. It makes us feel heartbroken and helpless. Then I read this thing by Marianne Williamson. She finishes off her piece saying, so this day for me is not about politics. I've concerned myself with the issue of Israeli and Palestinian politics for years, but today is not the day. Today, more than anything, I let myself cry. And I pray for them all. Today is not the day for politics. More than anything, I let myself cry and I pray for them all. That's Marianne Williamson. And, you know, that would have been a type of leader. If you had leaders who thought like that, is it so naive? Or could we get to a better place? But instead, she was seen as not political enough or not suitable for the kind of high stakes negotiations. What did high stakes or what have high stakes negotiations led to? A stalemate on the part of Biden and Blinken with all those who might say, yes, let's have a ceasefire. We're going nowhere with that. So the anniversary is just, if you truly want to avoid the frustration, maybe you take Marianne's approach. This is not a day for politics. This is a day we cry and pray for everyone. Really, how can you say more except to remember the dead, remember those hostages who we know have passed. Because they were released, we know we have their bodies. How do we proceed except to hope? Hope against hope that there are survivors. And then what of the images on the other side, the Palestinian children, the families trying to make their lives work in the landscape of war? I mean, we know that there were efforts made to try to bring people together. A year before January or October 7th, 2 years, people were always talking about, oh, we're moving forward. There was great hope. And now all that's dashed. So what else is left? But the day we cry and pray for everyone. So October 7th, also the day, if you're voting, it's the first day you can actually drop, in California at least, a day you can drop your ballot off. I have voted. So I do that not like, saying I'm vegan to make myself feel better. It's not virtue signaling. But I voted. Certainly you voted. No? Are you voted in your mind? You've made up your mind? Are you waiting for someone to come up with the magic words to bring a ceasefire to the Middle East? I mean, I can't believe Donald Trump saying, "Oh, look what I've done for the Jews. Everything I've done for the Jews. They should all vote for me." I don't know. I don't think so. I think Kamala Harris is saying the right thing. She's trying not to be political. She's trying to say, I'm not trying to both sides this, but we got to think about the Israeli people and also the Palestinian people. It's almost an admission that politics is not the route that we're going to get to the answers. Yeah. And this is why I've dreaded this day, October 7th, the anniversary. Just like, you get to that anniversary of the Ukrainian, the Russian invasion. Now we're into 3 years. And you get to the point where people start paying attention or stop paying attention. We can't do that. That's why empathy is still something, as long as it doesn't lead to inaction. And so far, that's all things have led to. It led to a kind of inaction where we're at a stalemate. So there are other things that are worth considering in terms of why are you going to vote, how are you going to vote. And I saw the Carville. Did you see the Carville documentary? I believe it premiered on Saturday. I hope I just didn't catch it on the library portion of my TV, because it was a great documentary. If you're interested in how we're going to create a new model where Democrats and Republicans get together and start families and start being the ultimate, it would be biracial, but the ultimate integrated bi-political family. Because he married Mary Madeline, who was in there with Bush and Cheney leading the fight, the Iraq War, right? And it nearly crushed James Carville, who was all for peace, not for war. But the one thing that happened was it didn't break up their marriage. And if you watch the documentary, what's interesting is that they said, yeah, we weren't going to divorce each other, but we might not have talked to each other for a long while. That's love. That's love. We need to have that kind of thing amongst each other. Or we don't hate, we don't divorce, we don't say, hey, we don't polarize, we don't other. We remind each other that we are a part of each other, that we are together as Americans. I think that was one of the takeaways for me watching the Carville documentary on CNN. One of the things about James Carville that I didn't know this, I knew that he was from Carville, Louisiana, and a map of Louisiana, because his father was the postmaster, things would get lost. He just named the section that he was postmaster Carville. And some people, and he acknowledges this, he says, well, some people thought I was some kind of land baron or something. And the fact is, Carville, Louisiana is one of the poorest areas in Louisiana. No different than some other areas that, tough times. It wasn't a wealthy place. They had a general store and they had a post office. They had one phone. And just hearing him tell his story, I didn't know that part. I knew he was from Carville, Louisiana, but I thought, that's where they put the leper colony. I thought somehow he might have been related to doctors or something. But no, the leper colony was placed there. It just happened to be there. And so he said, look, I'm here with Leprechaunly and all these, poor blacks and town of less than 1,000 people. He said, I'm a white guy. If you don't get along with everyone, you're incredibly lonely. And also, it sort of dictated the kind of civil rights mentality that James Carville had. My James Carville story is when I did a talk radio show in Washington, D.C., I would take the red line sometimes in D.C., and one night I saw Carville. We were on the red line. I think he was coming back from some event, and we had a chat. We talked. We would bump into each other. We were friendly, but I never tapped him to say, "Hey, you got to help out a brother." I never saw him as other than as a source where I can have him on my show and we can talk. But I only had him on maybe once or twice. But we knew of each other. We were friendly. If I saw him at a party or saw him at a cocktail party, I'd say, hey, you. And, but you see his life and you realize that before he got to Clinton, he wasn't a good student, found his way to the military, was in the Marines, I presume on the GI Bill, finished up college and went to law school, hated law, but was assigned to politicians, and the politicians he was assigned to tapped him to run his campaigns. He won one big campaign that led to another. Bob Casey, gubernatorial bid. Harris Wofford. Yeah, and he was seen as a local, regional, statewide kind of guru when it came to plain talk, connecting with the voter. And he didn't win his first race, he said, until he was 42. I mean, he was not, he wasn't handed anything on a silver platter. And then he got to the Clinton campaign, and pretty much that's where he got really nationally famous. He used to put up a set of rules about campaigns, and let's see if these apply to the current campaign for any of the candidates. The first rule was change versus more of the same. The winner is for change. And I think both Trump and Harris, are trying to capitalize on this. Trump saying, hey, you need change because we don't want more of the same Biden-Harris. It's almost like all Trump can see is the Biden-Harris thing as they're the incumbent and washing his hands free of everything that's wrong with this country. Like Donald Trump had nothing to do with anything, when Donald Trump had almost everything to do with what's wrong with this country now. From 2016 to 2020, I mean, yeah, Donald Trump hadn't been in office since 2020, but if you ask him, he didn't lose the 2020 race. And that's been part of the problem. That's been part of the polarization. So while Donald Trump says, oh, we want to change Biden-Harris, they're the more of the same, we want change, more people are upset with the ugliness in politics that was brought on by Donald Trump. That's the change that we need to see in America. We need to see a change in the polarization. We need to see a change in the gridlock. That wasn't brought on by Biden-Harris. That was brought on by Donald Trump. That's the change we're voting on in 2024. So if you want to play by James Carville's rules, change versus more of the same. When Kamala Harris says we're not going back, we're changing. We're changing this whole outlook. The polarization, the anti-immigrant, the hateful American rhetoric, we're changing that. We don't need more of the same. We would get more of the same under Donald Trump. But the two other rules that Carville says, he says, of course, he made this famous, the economy's stupid. It's the economy's stupid. It's the pocketbook. Yes, it always is. That's why, as much as we're concerned with January, or as much as we're concerned with October 7th, it's the economy's stupid. As much as we're concerned with January 6th, it's still the economy. There's some people who say the economy trumps. Oops. We need to ban that figure of speech. But it is the economy that makes all the difference. And why are we in this state? I think Harris has to make the point that we're in this state because of Donald Trump. That we are so far below that we had to bring ourselves up. And now we're in a good spot now. 2.5% inflation. Much better. But people would still say, oh, but I'm still hurting. Gas prices are up. So Harris has to better define how the economy is better under her, or will be better under her, rather than Trump just saying, hey, remember it was better before the pandemic. This is better. And I was president. Hey, I don't know. You want that world? Vote for me. That's illogical. Because Donald Trump had way more. I mean, you can't go, were you better then? You want that world? That's not how it works. What Donald Trump did during his time is the reason why Harris Biden was hamstrung and had to pull our country back up. So don't be fooled by Donald Trump. And the last one is important because people forget. Don't forget healthcare. Don't forget healthcare. J.D. Vance, during that debate, trying to make it sound like, oh, Donald Trump is the savior of health. No, he's not. He's not the savior of healthcare. Obamacare is important. Pre-existing conditions, all that. The Democrats brought it to you. Donald Trump wants to kill it. So just look at the three rules, Carville's rules. Change versus more of the same. The economy's stupid. And don't forget healthcare. If you look at those three, I'd say give two of the three to Kamala Harris. Because people will misconstrue the economy the way that Donald Trump is presenting it. Oh, remember before the pandemic, you were all doing better, right? Well, yeah, sort of. Gas was cheaper. Yeah, sort of. And then, Donald Trump not taking any responsibility for what happened during the Biden-Harris years. Because they had to deal with the repercussions of what Donald Trump did. So don't say, oh, Emil, it was Biden-Harris. It wasn't Trump. It was Biden-Harris. Okay, all right. Anyway, those three rules. Just another one of the things that that the documentary Carville shared. But I really think that the ultimate takeaway is Mary Madeline and James Carville's bipartisan marriage. And we have to work together. And we saw that last week when it was Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney talking about, I think they're forging a new model. How can we get to that place? How can we get to that spot where we're together fighting for our democracy? That's ideal. That's really the new America. And that's certainly not the America Donald Trump wants. He wants things polarized. He wants things divided. He wants fear, hate, and division. FHD. That's what he wants. Can't see it myself. Can't see how it helps. I voted. Haven't dropped my ballot into the box yet. But today I will. Today I will. I don't think there's any question. Some people say, well, that leaves about 7 to 10% who are still holding on, undecided. There is no. I don't know. I was in Vegas last week and I was surprised how many people they're still lured to Trump, lured to Trump's rhetoric. They shouldn't be. All right, I have the previous week I read a poem by a friend of mine, Tony Robles. Catch it on the Patreon. This is show 763. I think it's 762. Tony Robles, and he thanked me for reading the poem, and I just want to play a little of Tony's call. He says, here he is, Tony.
Sharing that poem. Hey, Emil, it's Tony Robles. Thanks for sharing that poem. I live in Hendersonville, which is, I guess, about maybe 20 to 30 minutes away from Asheville. It's a small town with a lot of seniors, but there is some diversity down here. We have a Micronesian community of island people that have been here for upwards of 10, maybe 15 years. There are some Filipinos down here. Of course, we have the Black community, and we also have a sizable Latino community as well. A lot of them have large families. Many of them are service workers. Many of them, work in the apple orchards. So there are organizations down here that are helping them, such as El Centro and True Ridge, which address the needs of the Latino community. But it's been hard down here because we don't have water. Many of us do not have electricity. I've been without electricity since the storm started, since the hurricane hit.
So that's my friend Tony Robles. He left me some voicemails because it's hard to communicate, when you have access to power. And I'm going to continue on with the story. But, as we talk about North Carolina, we're just digging up and getting the muck out. And already we're talking about another storm. We're talking about not Helene any longer, but we're talking about Milton. Milton. Oh, Milton. The scourge of my English class. I know I should have taken the Shakespeare instead of Milton, but I thought, I'm going to take Milton. Paradise Lost. Right? Milton? But, they're preparing for more down there in Florida, and of course it's going to move up. And here's Tony talking about digging out from under Helene in North Carolina, and he was 20 miles away from Asheville, 20 minutes away from Asheville. Still very tough.
We had no idea that the magnitude of this hurricane was going to be to the extent that it was. We thought that Florida would get the brunt, and that we would get kind of the dregs. We would just get the after or the fallout in western North Carolina, but that wasn't the case. Normally, and I've only been here for a little less than 6 years, the storms come up from Florida and they swoop along the coast in an area called the Outer Banks. So that's been the usual thing. And one of the selling points of Western North Carolina, Henderson County and Buncombe County and Asheville, was that it was an ideal weather location. It was almost being sold as a place that was almost kind of immune to a disastrous type of natural occurrence like this.
That's kind of interesting, because I've been to the Outer Banks, Kitty Hawk and all that, beautiful out there. Cape Fear is out there, the Outer Banks, and they get the bad weather. And you're thinking, oh, I'm up in the mountains, I'm free of all this. And you can see how that unscrupulous realtors might have suggested that, oh, here, you never have to worry. Oh, man, now they're worried. They got rain, they got mud, they got flooding, the river's flooded. Never can tell where those hurricanes or the tropical storms are going to go and dump the water. It's my friend Tony Robles, who I've known since he was like in high school. I knew his uncle, Al Robles, who was a poet, and Tony has become a poet also. Being a poet doesn't mean that, oh, you do that exclusively. He also works at a warehouse there in North Carolina. But I often wondered why he left San Francisco a couple of years ago, and he left because his mother was living in North Carolina, which I totally understand. Tony, I believe, lived most of the time here in the Bay Area in Vallejo. And so, like I said, I've known Tony for decades and was saddened to hear about him and his situation. So here's more from Tony.
I live in a mobile home community called Summer Path Village. It's a 55 and older. However, they've changed that, so they've opened it up to younger families. There were several homes that got destroyed by falling trees. One of which was a woman who was in her late 80s. A tree came right down on her unit. They were able to get her out and get her to a facility. But we've been fortunate in that we have a clubhouse, and we were right around the corner from an Ace Hardware that did not get damaged. So we've been able to get propane and have meals. And, just earlier today, there was somebody from one of the airport hubs that dropped off some meals and dropped off water and some supplies.
So he talks more.
Mother and stepfather lived very close to Chimney Rock, and I'm sure you're aware of what happened there. It's a small tourist destination, very quaint, very cute. I've been there many times. That was completely obliterated, and my mother and stepfather lived right up there, right? Like maybe 10 minutes up the mountain in a place called Bat Cave.
He talks more.
My mother and stepfather had to be airlifted by one of those military helicopters in order to get out. So their house was not damaged, luckily, but everything else was damaged. All of the roads, the bridges, all of the paths to get up there have been damaged. So they've been displaced. They're living with in-laws in Hendersonville. We're working on trying to get them, housing.
And so, more about gratitude.
I've been fortunate in that I work in a warehouse close by, about 5 minutes away from my house. So there is electricity in the warehouse, so I've been able to charge electrical devices.
And
I was fortunate in that my house at Summer Path Village, my mobile home was not hit. There were many houses that were hit, crushed. Kitty corner from my house, there was one place one unit that the whole front end was crushed by by a large tree that had fallen. Yeah, I mean, it's just an incredible situation. And, we got hit in Hendersonville, but it's nowhere near as bad as what happened in Swannanoa, in Buncombe County, where there's Asheville, there's Waynesville, there's small towns like Bakersville that was completely obliterated, towns that no longer exist now.
That was sad to hear.
I've befriended some Filipinos here. I mean, we don't have a lot, but I was, a day or two after the hurricane, I was in a line at Ingles Supermarket, and the line circled the entire circumference of the market. I was in the market for about an hour and a half, which isn't that long in comparison to other places. They were only taking cash, and I did not have cash at the time, and I asked the person in front of me if they could hold my cart hold my place in line, because I lived around the corner, and I realized that I had some cash on hand, so I was able to get, I think it was $110. When I got to the front of the line, I was able to buy everything that I wanted, and it came out to $107, much of which are like non-perishables, beef jerky, pretzels, and peanut butter. Interestingly enough, at that market, I saw a older Filipino woman, a manang, who was just kind of walking back and forth, and she was carrying a loaf of bread and a gallon of milk. So I thought, well, you know what? Let me pull her aside, and I did, and I had her put her things in my in my supermarket cart, because, I mean, waiting all that time, to just for a loaf of bread and a jug of milk, I figured, do her a little favor, and she was a nice lady, she lived not too far from me. She has a husband who, she helped with their refrigeration business several years ago. She told me she was taking a trip. She was scheduled to take a trip back home to the Philippines in a few days. And I don't think she made it because, the airport, the hubs, after a disaster like that, they're probably not going to be open to commercial flights soon after a disaster like that. But she was a very, very nice lady. Her name was Francisca. And we got to talking, and, she mentioned that her mother or her grandmother was alive during the Philippine or the Spanish-American War, I guess, over the Philippines.
1898.
The woman kind of reminded me of my grandmother, so it was, I don't know, it was just kind of touching to make that contact, and she said that she had married her husband. He's a white guy, right? Older white man, married her husband and, came on over here and, kind of saved his business. He had a refrigeration business that was kind of going under, and she helped him with the business, and it survived. And she thought it was funny because I said, well, I guess you saved his ass, huh? She looked at me kind of strange, and she shook her head. She said, yeah, I did. I did save his ass.
The truth.
But anyway, Emil, thank you for sharing the poem. And I'm scheduled actually to come to the city for the Filipino Book Festival next week. So, it'll give me a little bit of a break, from this. I've been actually working the whole time. I work 5 minutes from where I live, and the company that I work for is in a warehouse. In fact, my new book is called Where the Warehouse Things Are, and it's about my experiences working here. So I'll be promoting that book at the Filipino American Book Festival.
So that's Tony Robles. Yeah, the Filipino American Book Festival. I think it's in San Francisco by the library. And Where the Warehouse Things Are. Tony Robles, he's a poet, friend of mine, and he dropped me a line when I read his poetry on a previous show 762, I believe. This is 763, but check it out. It is a poem that describes meeting other people and thinking that, hey, we're here and we're powerless. We have no electricity. But when he talked to a stranger, a neighbor who was a stranger he'd never talked to before, he looked into her eyes and he realized that, in fact, they were not powerless, that they had power together. So, Tony, I read the poem and I put it on Facebook, and he sent me a number of voicemails, which I played for you there. Interesting, though. You know, it's not over, and already I'm seeing a text come out that FEMA is running out of volunteers. So people are going to have to rely on each other. Tony bumped into a Filipino guy, and he told me, he said, this was worse. The storm in North Carolina was worse than the typhoons that they had in the Philippines, because the typhoons in the Philippines, well, you know, they always come. You're ready for them. And then, well, how do you deal with the repetition? He said, well, we have that bayanihan spirit. We help each other. Is it all the time? You know, year after year? Yeah. He said that sometimes there's bayanihan abuse. There's always abuse, right? Because we're human. But he said, for the most part, there's that bayanihan spirit. And, you know, when I was watching one of the news programs today, people were describing a kind of bayanihan North Carolina spirit, that people were together, they had food, they weren't isolated as long as they were together, helping each other. They were helping each other. There was that bayanihan spirit that Tony found among Filipinos in North Carolina. And you have to just hope that can be sustained, because, like I said, I just saw a thing saying that FEMA is running out of volunteers. They're looking for volunteers. And some friends of Tony have posted a GoFundMe. Look for Tony Robles, TonyRobles, Robles. And I made a small donation to help out, enough to buy another set of groceries. Hopefully he can make it vegan and buy tofu instead of beef jerky, but he'll get the provisions that he can get, that he needs. Something you can do for a friend. And remember, this is one of our list of things that we're grateful for, that we have friends in situations like these that remind us that there is a bayanihan spirit. That's important. That bayanihan spirit. God, it's just so sobering today, between October 7th anniversary, between, we're in the midst of, now we're in the sprint of this campaign. And then we still have people who are like trying to get out of the muck and clear their lives. And on top of that, the 49ers lost a game they should have won. Cal lost a game they should have won. But boy, baseball is so exciting in October, isn't it? October baseball is exciting. Bryce Harper should have been a Giant. It's a home run. Shohei Ohtani should have been a Giant. It's home. All these should have been a Giant type players playing for other teams. It's frustrating. And of course, this is birthday week for Emil Guillermo. And I'm telling you, I don't know. It's a very humbling time. We're grateful. My columns are no longer on the ALDEF site, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. But check out a new column will be on Substack, substack.com/@Emil. And then if you want to hear me read them to you, that's a special deal. Check out patreon.com/Emil. Get one of the various tiers, and I read them. I post these. At some point, I'm not going to post these on YouTube. I'm just going to post maybe like a little bit. But you're going to get the whole thing uncensored on Patreon daily. Check it out. Patreon.com/EMILAMOK. Subscribe, sign up, support what we do here. And for my birthday, I mean, you can send me a Facebook note or whatever, but consider subscribing to the Patreon and get these shows, because I'm probably going to stop putting them on Facebook because of the algorithm, the censorship. No censorship on Patreon. And I'll probably just put out a little bit just saying, hey, it's here. Check it out. But it'll be on Patreon, the whole thing. I think that's the way to go. I think. Birthday gift idea for Emil Amok. Patreon.com/Emil Amok. And that's it. You know, I have found a great deal of satisfaction through meditation the last couple of years. It's helped me just sort of make sense of the world. And I probably will meditate a great deal today on October 7th. But one of the things is that you just handle it, that you just deal with it, the good and the bad, because it's going to happen. And you know you can't control those things that are outside of you, and you can't hope to begin to influence those outside forces. That if you want true happiness, it's going to come from within. And so I do a couple of things. I do this meditation called metta, and then I do this thing called laughter yoga. Now, laughter yoga, some people are going to say, Emil, laughter yoga really? Yeah, because laughter yoga is yoga that's independent of humor, jokes, or comedy. Say, how can laughter be independent of humor, jokes, or comedy? That can't be. Yes. Instead of an involuntary laugh to like, why did the chicken cross the road? Because that chicken was a dentist in the insurance that I carry. See, that wouldn't be funny. And you probably wouldn't have involuntarily laughed unless you know what I was going through this morning trying to find a dentist in my dental plan. But that's why a chicken would have crossed the road to get to the dentist who's in the chicken's wife's dental plan. But see, if you're not concerned about involuntary laughter, you know, like if you're just concerned about voluntary laughter, you volunteer laugh. Oh, Emil, that's all right. You don't have to like get it out of me with a joke. I'm going to volunteer it. See, if you volunteer a laugh, then you'll laugh forever. Or, you know, a decent amount of time. to get the stimulus, to get the exercise, to get the breathing apparatus working, to get the oxygen flowing, to get the nitric oxide going, to expand the endothelial linings in your blood vessels, to get that blood flow up, to make you feel good and healthy. That's why I do laughter yoga. It's true. It's true. So we're going to go 1 minute for world peace. I know you say, Emil, 1 minute? 1 minute of laughter? Yes, 1 minute of laughter for world peace. And we begin this way. Hello. We breathe. Breathe in and then out with the mouth. Breathe in with the nostrils and out with the mouth. We breathe in deeply and then out with the mouth. Like you're blowing a balloon. All right. We simulate that act by going a minute for world peace. Don't stop. We go aloha, right? And then we ha ha ha. Okay. Aloha. Ha 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 a bit. Ah, 104. Oh. See, it works. You laugh like that. It's a workout from the belly up through the diaphragm, up through the chest, the old air out, the new air in, the old air out, the oxygenation going in the brain. You try 5 minutes of that. You know, take a 10-second rest and then do it again. Voluntary laughter. You don't have to wait for the jokes. You don't have to wait for the punchline. It actually is very, very, very energizing, you know, laughter yoga. And I am a certified laughter yogi. A laughter yoga, of course, there's like black belts in karate. There are like some black belts that are better than other black belts. Well, same thing with laughter yoga. There are like certified laughter yogis. And then there are like the hotshot triple black belt, second, third degree. And then, but I have studied with the master laughter yoga or laughter yogi, Dr. Madan, I forgot his name. Dr. Madan. And we did it remotely. But he's the guy. He's the guy. And he said, bless you, you can laugh. And so I'm spreading 1 minute laughter for world peace. You try that in your COVID closet. Not gonna be the same. You'll see the difference. So we cool down after a minute, and then we do a little meditation, a little yoga nidra, or maybe I like a little metta, M-E-T-T-A, metta meditation, loving kindness, because that's what's going to change things a year after October 7th. A little loving kindness. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Patreon.com/Emil Amok. Till next time.